Welcome to John Carter. As the mediator's pen stopped moving across her notepad, and I watched my brother's confident smile fade for the first time in 8 months. 8 long months since he'd walked into my office with his lawyer. 8 months since he looked me in the eye and said he deserved half of everything I'd built. Now, as I spread 3 documents across the conference table, his attorney leaned back in his chair, and I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. This wasn't going the way they'd planned. But before I tell you how we got to this moment, please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Because what happened to me could happen to anyone, and you need to hear this. My company, Sullivan Construction, 37 years of my life, written in concrete and steel across the Phoenix skyline. And my younger brother wanted half of it because our father, in the fog of Parkinson's dementia, had supposedly promised it to him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back. It started on a Tuesday morning in March, 18 months after Dad's funeral. I was at the Scottsdale site, watching the framing crew on our latest commercial project when my assistant called. David, your brother James is here. He has someone with him. Says it's important. James, and I hadn't spoken much since the funeral. We'd never been close. Not really. He'd gone the academic route. Spent 6 years getting his architecture degree. Worked for prestigious firms in Seattle and Portland. I'd stayed in Phoenix. Started with a hammer and a pickup truck. Built something real with my hands. Different paths, different lives. Dad used to say we both made him proud, just in different ways. I drove back to the office, still wearing my work boots, dust on my jeans. James was in the conference room wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck payment. Next to him sat a man in an even more expensive suit, briefcase open on the table. David. James stood up, didn't offer to shake hands. This is Robert Martinez. He's an attorney specializing in business disputes and estate law. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What's this about? It's about what's fair, James said. It's about what Dad wanted. Martinez slid a document across the table. Mr. Sullivan, my client believes he's entitled to 50% ownership of Sullivan Construction based on verbal agreements made by your late father, Patrick Sullivan. I stared at the paper. It was a formal claim, legal language I barely understood. Dad didn't own any part of my company. He gave me $15,000 in 1986 to buy my first truck and equipment. That's it. I built this business myself. Our father told me repeatedly over the last 5 years of his life that when he was gone, James and I would share everything equally. My brother said, his voice calm, practiced. Every time I visited, he said it. You boys will share everything. That's what family does. That's... The word came out harder than I meant it. Dad was proud of what I built, but he never said I owed you anything. I have evidence, James said. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen. Our father's voice filled the room, thin and shaky. I recognized it from his last year, when the Parkinson's had gotten bad, when he started forgetting things, repeating himself. You boys need to take care of each other, Dad's voice said. James, your brother's going to share everything with you. That's what I want. You boys share everything. The recording stopped. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. Have you ever had a family member betray you like this? Keep watching, because what I discovered next changed everything. When was this? I managed to ask. Thanksgiving, 2 years ago, for months before he died. He had dementia, James. You know that. The Parkinson's affected his brain. His neurologist said so. He was lucid when he said it. James insisted. And he said it to me at least 20 times over 5 years, long before the dementia. Martinez leaned forward. Mr. Sullivan, we're not looking for a fight. We're proposing mediation. A neutral third party can help us work out a fair settlement. Settlement. I looked at James. You want me to give you half of my company? Half of 37 years of work. Dad always intended for us to be partners. James said. You know he did. He talked about family legacy, about us working together. He talked about a lot of things. I said, but he never owned this company. He never worked here. He gave me a gift when I was 26 years old, and I turned it into something, Where were you when I was working 18-hour days? When I was one bad job away from bankruptcy? When I was sleeping in my truck between sites? I was building my career, James said, and there was an edge in his voice now. I was getting an education. I was making Dad proud in my own way. And he paid for that education, I said. Every penny of it. That's not relevant, Martinez interrupted. What's relevant is your father's stated intention regarding the business. I stood up. Get out of my office. David, get out. Both of you. I'm not giving you anything. James looked at me for a long moment. We'll see you in mediation, David, whether you like it or not. That was 8 months ago. I hired my own attorney, Catherine Ross, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd helped me with contracts and business deals for years. She reviewed everything, took my statement, looked at the corporate documents. David, legally, they don't have a case, she said. Your father never had ownership. His verbal promises, even if they're true, don't create a legal obligation. So, why are we going to mediation? Because James can still file a lawsuit. It'll be expensive, time-consuming, and public. Your clients will hear about it. Your employees will worry. Even if we win, and we will win, it'll cost you. Mediation is faster, cheaper, and private. He's my brother, I said, and I heard the exhaustion in my own voice. How do we get here? Catherine's expression softened. Family and money, David. It's the oldest story there is. The mediation was scheduled for a Wednesday in October. The office was downtown, neutral territory, conference room with a view of the mountains. The mediator was a retired judge named Patricia Rodriguez. Gray hair, kind eyes, reputation for fairness. James and Martinez arrived first. James looked confident, relaxed. He'd always been good at presentations, at making his case. That's what architects do, I suppose. They sell visions. Thank you all for being here, Judge Rodriguez said once we'd settled in. Mediation is about finding common ground. I want to hear from both sides, understand what we're dealing with, and see if we can reach an agreement that honors your father's memory and your family relationship. Martinez went first. He laid it out like a case, methodical and persuasive. Patrick Sullivan had given his older son seed money for a business. He'd supported his younger son's education. Both investments, he argued, both expressions of a father's love. But Patrick had always intended for his sons to be partners, to share the fruits of his support. We have testimony, Martinez said, playing the recording again. Dad's voice saying James, and I should share everything. We have witnesses, he continued. James's wife heard Patrick say it. James's daughter heard him say it. Over 5 years, dozens of times, Patrick Sullivan expressed his wish that his sons would share equally in the family legacy. I watched Judge Rodriguez take notes. Her expression was neutral, but I could see her processing it. And what is your proposed resolution? She asked. 50% equity in Sullivan Construction, Martinez said. Immediate transfer to James Sullivan. David remains as CEO. James joins the board. Major decisions require both signatures. We can work out the details of salary and distributions, but the fundamental ownership should be equal. Judge Rodriguez turned to me. Mr. Sullivan, your response? I was about to lose everything I'd built, but I had something they didn't know about, something that would change this entire mediation. I prepared for this. Catherine and I had gone over it a dozen times. But sitting there, listening to my brother claim half of my life's work, the prepared speech evaporated. I started Sullivan Construction in 1986, I said. I was 26 years old. I'd been working construction since I was 18, learning the trade, saving money. Our dad, gave me $15,000. It was a graduation gift. He said he was proud I'd found my path without needing college. I looked at James. You were 21, starting your architecture degree at Arizona State. Dad was paying your tuition, your housing, your books, every semester, every year. He was proud of you, too. David, James started. Let him finish, Judge Rodriguez said. I took that $15,000 and bought a used Ford pickup, a set of tools, and took out ads in the local paper. I worked alone for 2 years. Then I hired my first guy, then another. I made mistakes. I lost money on jobs. I learned. For 37 years, I've shown up every single day. I've bled for this company. Literally. I've got scars on my hand from concrete burns, a bad knee from falling off scaffolding, hearing loss in my left ear from years around power tools. My voice was getting louder. Catherine touched my arm gently. Where were you, James? I asked. You were in Seattle designing condos for millionaires. Then Portland, working for some firm that made glass buildings. You never wanted this. You never wanted to get your hands dirty. That's not fair, James said. I had my own career. I built my own reputation. Exactly, I said. You built yours. I built mine. Dad supported both of us in different ways. And we both succeeded. Why isn't that enough? Because Dad told me we'd share, James said, and I heard something in his voice I hadn't expected. Desperation. He promised me, David, for 5 years every visit. He told me I'd be taken care of, that you and I would be partners. He had dementia, I said quietly. You know he did. Not for all 5 years, James insisted. The first 3 years he was fine. He knew exactly what he was saying. Judge Rodriguez held up a hand. Let's take a break. 15 minutes. I want to speak with each party separately. We stepped out into the hallway. Catherine pulled me aside. How are you holding up? He really believes it, I said. James really thinks Dad promised in my company. Belief isn't legal standing, Catherine said, but she's listening to him. Judge Rodriguez is sympathetic. What do? We present our case. We show her the facts. When we reconvene, Judge Rodriguez looked at me. Mr. Sullivan, I have to tell you, the recording is compelling. Your father's voice expressing a clear wish that his sons share equally. Can you refute that? I can provide context, I said. I'd been up all night before the mediation, going through boxes in my garage. Boxes I'd taken from Dad's house after he died. Stuff I couldn't throw away but hadn't looked at. Old paperwork, files, records he'd kept for decades. Dad had been meticulous about some things, even as the Parkinsons got worse. I pulled out the first document. This is a personal ledger my father kept. I said, placing it on the table. He started it in 1982, kept it updated until about 2020. He recorded every significant financial decision, every major expense, every gift to family members. I opened it to a page marked with a sticky note. March 12, 1986. Entry reads, gave David $15,000 for his construction business. This is his graduation gift since he didn't go to college. He's got a good head for business and strong hands. He'll make something of himself. This money is his to keep, his start in life. Judge Rodriguez leaned forward, reading the entry. Below that, I continued, you'll see a note. We'll do the same for James when his time comes. Each boy gets his own path. James's face had gone pale. I never saw that. There's more, I said. The look on my brother's face when he saw what I pulled out next, I'll never forget it. This is where everything changed. I pulled out the second document. These are bank statements from 1988 through 1993. University of Arizona tuition payments. Student housing, a monthly stipend for living expenses. I slid a summary sheet Catherine had prepared across the table. Total pay for James's architecture degree, $95,400. That's 1988 through 1993. Adjusted for inflation to today, that's about $220,000. My education wasn't. James started. Wasn't what? I asked. Wasn't support from Dad? Wasn't investment in your future? Because that's exactly what it was, James. Dad invested in both of us. Differently, yes, but equally in his heart. Martinez was flipping through the bank statements. I could see him doing the math in his head. The ledger shows Dad's thinking was clear, Catherine said. Each son received support for their chosen path. David got seed money for his business. James got an education. Patrick Sullivan believed in equal support for different dreams, not equal ownership of one son's business. But the recording, Martinez began. The recording was made in 2022, I said, pulling out the third document. 2 years after Dad stopped keeping his ledger. Here's a medical record from Banner Desert Medical Center, Dated June 2021. Neurological evaluation by Dr. Sarah Kleinman. I read from the report. Patient exhibits significant cognitive decline, consistent with Parkinson's disease dementia. Short-term memory severely impaired. Patient repeats statements and questions multiple times within single conversation. Patient's grasp of legal and financial matters is unreliable. Patient should not make significant decisions without family oversight and medical consultation. The room was silent. This evaluation was 15 months before the recording Michael has. I said, Dad's neurologist documented that his statements were unreliable. He repeated things. He got confused about timelines and facts. I was with him almost every day those last 2 years. He'd tell me stories from his childhood like they happened yesterday. He'd forget my kids' names, then remember them an hour later. I looked at James. You visited, 3 times a year? Thanksgiving, Christmas, maybe a summer visit. You didn't see the bad days. You didn't see him forget where he was. Forget what year it was. He seemed fine when I was there, James said, but his voice was small. Because he had good moments, I said. The neurologist explained it to me. Parkinson's dementia isn't like Alzheimer's. It comes and goes. He'd have a good afternoon, seemed like his old self. Then an hour later, he wouldn't know how to use his phone. Judge Rodriguez was reading the medical report carefully. Mr. Martinez, do you have any medical evidence refuting this evaluation? No, Your Honor, but... And the recording in question was made after this evaluation? Yes, but my client maintains that similar statements were made years earlier, before any cognitive decline. Similar statements, I said, and I heard the edge of my voice. Not you'll own half of David's company. Not David will make you a partner. Just vague things about sharing, about family taking care of each other. Dad said things like that my whole life. He said we should share our good fortune. He said families should support each other. He meant it philosophically, not legally. I pulled out one more paper. This is the original canceled check from March 1986. $15,000 made out to me with a note on the memo line. For David's future. It cleared through First National Bank on March 18, 1986. A gift, not a loan, not an investment. A graduation present for the son who didn't graduate. James was staring at the check. I saw something cross his face. Recognition. Maybe memory. Do you remember James? I asked. You were home for spring break that year. Dad gave me the check at dinner. Mom made pot roast. You were excited because you'd just been accepted into the architecture program. Dad made a toast. He said he was proud of both his boys, that we were both going to make our mark on the world in our own ways. James closed his eyes. He never said I'd own your company, James. I said quietly, You're right. He never said those specific words. He talked about family, about not leaving anyone behind, about sharing what we had. And I would have, I said, if you'd ever needed help. If you'd ever asked, I would have helped you. But you never needed help, James. You have a good career. You make good money. You own a nice house in Portland. What changed? James looked at his lawyer, then back at me. I saw his jaw tighten. I got divorced, he said finally. Last year, Linda got the house. She got half my retirement. My daughter's in private college. Tuition is $60,000 a year. I'm 63 years old, and I'm broke. David, I thought Dad meant for you to help me. There it was. Not greed, not jealousy, just desperation. My brother wasn't trying to steal from me. He was drowning, and I had to decide what kind of man I wanted to be. Judge Rodriguez let out a long breath. Mr. Martinez, I think we need to reevaluate this claim. Your Honor, my client. Your client misremembered his father's intentions, Judge Rodriguez said, not unkindly. These documents are clear. Patrick Sullivan gave each son equal support for different paths. He never gave David's business to James, and the statements made during his cognitive decline cannot override the documented evidence of his earlier, competent intentions. She looked at James. Mr. Sullivan, I sympathize with your financial situation, but this mediation is not the solution to those problems. James slumped his chair. Martinez began packing up his briefcase, his movements precise and controlled. A lawyer who knew when he'd lost. "I'm sorry," James said, and I realized he was talking to me. I convinced myself it was real. That Dad had promised me something. That I deserved it. I was scared. I looked at my younger brother, at the gray in his hair I hadn't noticed before, at the lines around his eyes. When had we both gotten old? "Let's take a walk," I said. We left the lawyers in the conference room and went down to the street. It was a clear October day, cold enough to see your breath. We walked towards a park, not saying anything at first. "Remember when Dad taught us to frame a wall?" I said finally. "We were, 12 and 7? He had that shed he was building in the backyard." I hit my thumb with a hammer. James said, "Cried for an hour." He told you that's how you learn. That mistakes teach you respect for the tools. I hated that shed, James said, but he was almost smiling. You loved it. You and Dad out there every weekend, hammering and sawing. I just wanted to draw buildings, not build them. You were good at drawing. I said, "You still are. I've seen some of your designs online. That library in Seattle is beautiful." "You looked me up?" "Of course I did. You're my brother." We sat on a bench in the park. A mom was pushing a stroller nearby. 2 kids chasing pigeons. "I don't have 50% to give you," I said, "but I can help." "David, you don't have to." "Dad's house," I said. "It's still in the estate. Been meaning to settle it for months. It's worth about $400,000. We split it 50-50. That's $200,000 for you. Should help with the divorce debt. Buy you some breathing room." "That house is yours," James said. "You took care of Dad. You were there every day at the end." "The house is ours," I corrected. "Dad left it to both of us. Equal shares. I've been dragging my feet on dealing with it because—" I paused. Because it meant accepting he was really gone. James looked out at the mountains. "I was a terrible son at the end. You were busy. You had your own life." "That's an excuse," he said. "I should have come home more. I should have helped you." "You're here now," I said. "Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose between being right and being kind? And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life." We sat there for a while, watching the kids play. Finally, James said, "I'm sorry I put you through this. The mediation, the lawyers, all of it." "You were scared," I said. "I get it. I've been scared plenty of times. Starting the business, every recession, every slow season. Fear makes us do stupid things." Still, I agreed. We walked back to the office building. The lawyers were in the lobby, talking. They stopped when they saw us. "We're done here," I told Catherine. "James is withdrawing his claim. David and I are going to work out Dad's estate." James added, "Split the house proceeds." That's what Dad would have wanted. Martinez looked like he wanted to argue, but James cut him off. "Send me your final bill. We're finished." After they left, Catherine looked at me. "You sure about this? About the house?" "Yeah, it's fair. It's what Dad intended. And if James comes back with another claim later?" "He won't," I said. "I was sure of it. We just needed to clear the air." That was 3 months ago. James and I sold Dad's house in November. The market was good. We got $430,000 for it. Split it right down the middle. James paid off his divorce lawyer, his credit cards, got his daughter's tuition covered for the year. Last week, he called me. "I'm moving back to Phoenix," he said. "Found a position with a firm here, smaller than what I'm used to. But the work's good." Yeah, I want to be closer to family. To you, to your kids. I miss too much already." "That'd be good," I said. "And David," I was thinking, "my firm does commercial work. We need builders sometimes. I could send some projects your way. If you're interested." "I'm interested." "It wouldn't be a partnership," he said quickly. "Just brothers sending work to brother. Professional courtesy." "I know what it is," I said, "and I appreciate it." Yesterday, I was out at the Scottsdale site again, watching the steel going up on what's going to be a mixed-use development. My foreman came over with a question about the foundation, and as I walked over to look at the plans, I saw James's name in the corner of the blueprint. His firm had done the design work. It was a good design. Clean lines, efficient use of space, structural elegance, the kind of thing that makes a building more than just a building, the kind of thing that makes it last. I pulled out my phone and sent him a text. Nice work on the Scottsdale project. Really good design. He replied a minute later. Thanks. Your crew does solid work. They're making it look even better than I drew it. That's all it was. A simple exchange. But standing there in the November cold, looking at my company's name on the site sign and my brother's name on the blueprint, I thought about Dad, about what he'd wanted for us. Not that we'd own the same things. Not that we'd split everything 50-50. Just that we both make our mark in our own ways. And maybe, sometimes, those marks would overlap. He'd be proud, I think, of both of us, of what we built together and separately. My phone buzzed again. Another text from James. Thanksgiving at your place this year? Rachel wants to see her cousins. I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. Because in the end, that's what family is. Not ownership percentages or legal claims. Not who got more or less from our parents. It's showing up. It's being there when it matters. It's knowing that you can screw up. You can be scared and stupid and selfish. And the people who love you will still be there when you're ready to make it right. Dad taught me a lot of things. How to frame a wall. How to read a level. How to build something that lasts. But the most important lesson wasn't about construction at all. It was about foundation. Not the concrete kind, but the kind you build with people, with family. The kind that can crack under pressure, that needs maintenance and care, but that holds up everything that matters. James and I, we cracked a little, but we didn't break. And standing there on that cold November morning, watching the building rise, I realized that's all Dad really wanted, for us to build our lives, separately and together. And when things got hard, to remember that we were brothers first. The rest was just details. The rest was just paperwork.